I was a real estate developer and owned a real estate company here in Ellensburg for a number of years.
But you farm too, right?
Well, ranch, raised some roping cattle
And hay?
Yeah, some hay, mostly just pasture, for the cattle. Yeah, so we did some hay. I grew up on a dryland wheat farm in eastern Washington, and my father was in the thoroughbred race business, so that's kind of how I probably got my original interest in horses anyway, but never rode any race horses, but anyway, and then came to college at the university here, which was called Central Washington State College when I was going to college in late 60s, 70s, and never left Ellensburg, just stayed right here. Wow, that would be a long time ago. I was probably 7, 8 years old. My folks we had horses, and we had a few saddle horses and things like that. But I didn't rope. I didn't. My dad was a racehorse guy. We didn't rope. I didn't start roping until I was in my 40s. I had a doctor, actually. I had a little heart issues, and he said I needed to do something less stressful. Not that roping is like that. And so I took a roping school from Jerry Anderson, who is a grandfather of Riley and Brady Minor that have made the rodeo finals many years, anyway, up here in Cleellum. And that was my first taste of actually roping. I was on the Ellensburg Rodeo Board at the time, so I was around horses, but I had not roped until that time. I was gonna give it up at noon. They had a break and we were having some sub sandwiches for lunch, and Jerry Anderson took me out when everybody was having their lunch and got a 50-gallon drum, and he put it in the arena, and I stood on the ground, and it got me to opening up my loop and catching that 50-gallon drum. After lunch, I started catching some live cattle, and I was hooked. And I've always thanked Jerry, all the time I was around him for, not letting me quit, because it's turned out to be a great passion in my life, I guess. At that time I was heading, and lately I've been heeling. You've got to get your rope open, and apparently I wasn't getting it open enough. So as I would ride up to the steer, I kept missing and missing, He took me out after lunch because he recognized that I needed to get the loop open. And when you had that 50-gallon barrel, the fuel barrel there, it got you to opening up your loop, Right after lunch, I started catching a couple, and then you're hooked. On the heading side, you've got the horns of the steer, and when you catch the horns, that's a legal catch, but you can also half head them or neck rope them, and that's also illegal in team roping. But it makes it a little more difficult for the heeler when you neck rope them, because it starts to maybe slightly choke the steer down, and they kind of start dragging their back legs. If you catch their horns, and then you go to the dally and you start pulling the steer off, their back legs kind of act almost like a bunny, a rabbit. They kind of stay it together. So then when the heeler, but either the heading or the heeler, you got to get pretty close. The headers get probably a third of the way up to the side of a steer before they throw their rope. The heeler, you get right in behind them. The head of your horse is nearly at the rear end of the steer for heeling, so you can place your loop on the back legs. Well, I think so. We had horses growing up, and my dad always provided us with, just little saddle horses that were gentle and fun for kids and stuff like that. So we kind of but then I got away from it for a long time. I mean, for like 20 years, came to college, got into softball and that kind of stuff, after college. And then I was probably I was riding, and I was on the rodeo board, so we'd ride in the grand entries and go in parades and things like that, but nothing like roping, it was, and so once you start roping, boy, most people who start roping, there's a real passion to it. I mean, you really enjoy it, it's real challenging. I think it's a lot like golf, there's a lot of things to it mentally. The thing with team roping is you got 5 things going on. You've got a header, you've got a heeler, you've got, the steers, and then you've got time clocks, and, you've got to be able to, give them a head start. And there's, you got the steer's brains and 2 headers' brains, and then you've also got 2 horses' brains. So there's 5 things going on. every trip down the arena, so it's a combination of all those things to make it work. The difference between the pros and people like myself, amateurs, is just night and day. I mean, it's like a golfer that's going out on the weekends, and Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson. There's people that really know what they're doing, and team roping, you don't have to get off the horse. Calf roping, you jump off the horse, or steer roping where you get off and tie their legs together. Team roping you can do. I roped in Arizona. We go to Arizona most winters and rope almost every day during the winter. I roped a couple of years ago with a fellow from Kansas that was 93 years old. So I mean, that's obviously very unusual, but anyway, there's fellows doing it. There's guys that are in their early 80s to mid 80s still doing it. You sit on a horse and you're roping. You don't get off. So it's something you can do a long time. It's just I'm not going to say you don't get any aches and pains once in a while from doing it, but if you stay after it, you stay in pretty good shape, and it's not too difficult. I came to college, played a little college baseball, and then I got real involved and played softball. I played softball till I was in my 40s, pretty competitive softball, Then I used to play basketball every day at noon hour against college kids. I did that till I was in my 50s, College kids, you're playing against them, full court basketball like that. Started roping and just stayed with it, and just do it, every day and every day, and I think staying active, and ranch work, even just simple things. We live up on a hill, irrigating every day, you're walking up and down the hills, and we rope 4 days a week this time of the year. In the winter, I rope pretty much 6-7 days a week, down in Arizona, so. You're busy, it gives you something to do. I enjoy. I kind of need a project. My wife will tell you that. I always kind of need projects, something to. Training on horses. Horses that I have now are like 9 and 13, but I've had them for 6-7 years, and you spend some fair amount of time training the horses and working with the horses. But it's enjoyable if you like that, Again, I'm not a golfer, but I have friends that pretty active, played a lot of golf and stuff, and there's a lot of similarities, the concentration, the practice. Yeah, when you rope, you follow through, there's just a lot of things that they're similar. And I think most of us that rope, team rope in particular, it is so challenging that it keeps your interest up. It's not repetitious. Every run is usually different. You've got I primarily heel, but you got a guy that's roping the steers' heads and turning them off, and some steers run fast, some go off to the right, go to the left. It's different. Some duck their heads. It does, and now with technology, just like we're doing today, most of these guys' wives or friends that are with them video stuff. They have a video of the steer before they go to there's stock contractors that provide cattle for the rodeos, like in the Northwest. Brent Palmer's a fellow down here in Milton, Freewater, Washington, Walla Walla area. He provides the cattle for Puyallup and Pendleton and Ellensburg and Lewiston. So those same roping steers go to primarily, they change a little bit, but they go, so they'll have a friend and they draw for the steers, and they'll have a friend that had the steer maybe in Kennewick before they came to Ellensburg, 2 or 3 weeks before Ellensburg is Kennewick. And those guys will be able to, maybe some steers go off to the left hard, some go to the right, some run really hard. And that's an advantage to know your steer. Same thing with their horses at the rodeos too. We raised roping steers for a number of years, quite a few of them. And then, so when they're born, you breed them, and they're born in the spring. You don't rope them till they're a year old. You can rope them, competitively when you put on ropings for probably another year, and then they get pretty large. They'll get up to 600-700 pounds. It's pretty hard on horses to pull a steer that's that heavy. So you trade those out usually. And when we were putting on ropings for years, we would keep the females and then breed them, and then you'd have more, because it takes, it's a couple year cycle. But you can, if you take care of them, and what I do is, like now, I just have enough that we can rope for fun and just for pleasure. And I'll take some younger ones, which I have right now, that I haven't actually roped this year. But when the professionals come to stay with us during the Ellensburg Rodeo, I will let them train those steers because they want to rope. They're here for 3 or 4 weeks. And so I'll bring them fresh steers and they'll get them trained really nice. Because just like a horse, a steer has to be trained. I mean, they don't just run down there. They lose their balance. When you get their horns roped and they start getting pulled, their legs will get out from under them. They'll fall down. It doesn't hurt them, but they'll get back up. And these are Mexican cattle. They're called Corrientes, and it's a breed of steer. They're very resilient. You can rope them, and they take it. We put protections. You saw that, I think, when you were here the other day. They're like almost like earmuffs and stuff. So when the rope goes around their horns, it can't get to their hide or their skin. My youngest daughter, who did high school rodeo, she was in the roping club, went to nationals in the high school, and also went to the U.S. finals in team roping for amateurs in Oklahoma City. She qualified and won the regionals in Winnemucca, Nevada. She had a horse. You could barrel race on him, you could team rope on him, you could do poles, and he didn't have any papers. We don't know anything. We used him till he was in his mid-20s. He was that good, and he was a fabulous horse, Palomino. And when we got him, he came from Texas. They called him Utility, and we changed it. My daughter didn't like utility names, so we called him Utah to be a little more Western. But anyway, he was a great horse. And oldest daughter had a paint horse. It was very nice. It lasted a long time. And my oldest daughter is on a ranch in Elgin, Oregon, and she rides, her and her husband, and she has a 10 and 12-year-old. They're on a few thousand acres down there. They ride every day for a purpose. They move cows and brand, and they're down towards Enterprise, Joseph, Oregon, down in that country where it's real mountainous country. But they haven't. The kids are getting into it. The kids are already doing junior rodeos, and the oldest boy was on the television the other night untying steers or calves at the Elgin Rodeo. So their dad ropes good, so it's, and the youngest daughter is a school teacher in Seattle. She hadn't roped in 7 or 8 years, and we were with the Miner family in Arizona 2 years ago, and she picked it up like she never forgot. She hadn't roped in 7 or 8 years. She jumped on my horse, and she was primarily a header, because that's what she did all the time. Dad was a heeler. Anyway, she got on my heel horse and just heeled fine, and we just laughed about it. It's like a bicycle. Once you learn how to do it, you don't forget. So. The best thing I can say about, especially on the horse end, is roping with your kids. My daughters, both of them headed, I heeled. We would compete and go to jackpots or go to, amateur team roping events and things like that. And it's a high for a parent to rope with your kids, I think. You could have some success here or there with adult men and different people. I've entered our Pro-Am on our West Star roping with world champions. I mean, literally, and that's fun. I don't want to say it wasn't fun, but I don't think there's anything like roping with your own children, as far as that would be the highlight of my roping career, And the ranching was, is fun. I enjoy it. I think I was in the real estate business, real estate development, did commercial properties and built office complex and retirement facilities, and that's fairly stressful, and so getting away from that and getting into horse stuff. I mean, you block everything out. You might have a lot of stress on your package that day, but when you hop on a horse and you forget all that. It might only be for a few minutes, but you totally forget the stress. Wasn't it Will Rogers, a quote he said this pretty common, is the outside of a horse is good for the inside of a man. I think that was his quote. I might maybe someone else, but it was something but there's something to it. I mean, sometimes, again, in the winter in Arizona, I'll just hop on a horse and take off out in the desert. I mean, for hours, just ride, ride one and lead one. I have 2 horses, and We're on the edge of a bunch of federal property, DNR property, so we just open up the gate and you can ride. It's sand, and just rolling hills, and you can ride wherever you want, and sometimes, oftentimes do it in pairs, just for safety issues and things like that, but it's real relaxing, and it's great for the horses. Horses don't need to be in a roping arena every day of their life because it's stressful for them. They're chasing a steer and they're getting poked with some spurs and things like that. So, and you'll notice it in their temperament. You take them out for a trail ride in the desert or up in these mountains, they drop their heads and they just start walking with they're real relaxed. They might, the first 100 yards, they might be kind of excited, but then after a while, they just put their heads down and walk on the trails. A quarter horse is quick, they're quick from point A to point B. Thoroughbreds long distance, and they have those endurance horses that are Arabians a lot of times and things like that can, go for a long time. But a quarter horse, they have, the races, those big $1 million races they have in New Mexico, they're 440 yards or they're 350 yards. That's, a roping arena is 300 feet long, so it's 100 yards. It's only like 3 lengths of a roping arena. But the horses have that bolt of speed. And on the calf roping on the PRCA level and team roping, these horses they're shorter, they call it hands, but they're from 13 to 15, 2 or 3, like that. A lot of times thoroughbreds are 16, 17 hands tall. They're quite a bit taller, longer legged, and things like that. Quarter horses are like a running back in football. They're stocky, short built, but they're quick, and that's what you need, breakaway breakaway calf roping is becoming extremely popular. There's hundreds to thousands of girls that are doing that now. And it's really put a positive spin on raising nice rope horses now because there's so many girls interested. They do it, you saw it Sunday at the deal. They run out and they rope the calf and then it breaks away from the horn and with a little flag, and that's their time, as opposed to calf roping where they jump off and tie the calf. Well, the girls have just, put a lot of pressure on nice horses because there's so many girls enjoying that sport. It's good for the horse industry, It's good for I'm sitting on the hay industry. Ellensburg, like in the fall when these kids come, they really like the hay that's grown in the Northwest. The alfalfa, I think I'm close on this, but the protein value in this alfalfa is somewhere 19 to 21%. Down south, it can be 9 to 10 or 11%. They get a lot of cuttings down there, right where we are in Arizona. They'll get like 9 cuttings a year. Here in Ellensburg, we'll get 3, maybe 4 of alfalfa. It's got to, I'm not an expert, but I know there's quite a difference. Well, and the cowboys, particularly the professionals, they want their horses to fire. So they want them, it's like going to a Dairy Queen and having a hot fudge sundae. They want them ready to fire, and that good alfalfa. Oftentimes, and they did it last year again from some local farmers right here, as soon as they head back to Texas, Oklahoma, the south where they're coming from, they'll load their trailers, the extra stalls in their trailers or the hay pods on top with Northwest hay. Timothy, which is a real, popular hay that's grown in the Kittitas Valley. This has been several years ago, but I think Anderson Hay and Grain, and check me on this, but I think there were 6 of the horses, of the 18 or 20 horses in the Kentucky Derby, were eating hay from the Kittitas Valley. We were in Hawaii, went to a roping event in Hawaii, and the guy had pressed up bales from Ellensburg in Hawaii. So it tells you something, and they're shipping it over there to feed their horses. They raise hay in Hawaii, but so it just shows you, how the hay out of this valley is popular. Oh gosh, Costco, something that my wife buys at Costco. I couldn't even take Kirkland brand Costco. No, I use creamer in it. I don't use sugar. I just put some creamer in it. My wife makes a really good granola, and I have a bowl of that with the yogurt. That's my typical breakfast. I've always really liked salads. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I probably eat salads 5 days a week. lunch or dinner. If I have it for lunch, I won't have it for dinner. My wife's a very good cook, and so she bakes stuff and things like that. And just stay active, I guess. She'll do everything from she makes homemade spaghetti to, last night we raised some Angus cows and anyway, we had some good steaks last night. They were a good steak, baked potato, and some cucumbers with sour cream. I mean, she's a good cook. And in the winter, again, in Arizona, back to the health thing, I had open heart surgery, and this has been 12, 15 years ago. And the doctor I was with, it was like a month. I had a call back after the surgery, and he says, I want you to start walking a mile. And I said, well, if it makes any difference, I'm walking 5. And he says, get out of here. I never saw her again. So we walk 4 or 5 miles every day. Just walk. We're out in the country down there, away from people. We kind of have some back roads. We take our dog with us, and I don't do it as much here. I'm busy.
You don't have the time.
I'm busier here. I'm irrigating, and I'm up and down the hill and stuff like that. So I'm a little busier here than I am in Arizona. We're kind of on holiday down there. I think my dad and mother, probably taught me good work ethics, raised on a farm, like that. And my dad was extremely kind. He always worried about people. We lived in a real small town, 300 people. And gosh, I can remember being on like Thanksgiving, he'd say, well, so-and-so is all by themselves. And we'd bring people from town up and have Thanksgiving dinner with us, And I was kind of raised that way, My mother was a school teacher, and she taught us kind of the importance of both. All of our, you have 2 daughters and my wife and myself. We all graduated from Central Washington University here. Again, we were state college. My youngest daughter went to WSU, but she got her master's degree. So we've got 5. My wife's got her master's. We got 5 or 6 degrees out of the university here. So my mom put a good emphasis on. Education. My oldest daughter is a business manager of the school district, and my youngest daughter was the school teacher of the year in King County, Seattle, 2 or 3 years ago. There were thousands of school teachers, So I think, they're stepping in their grandparents, so you're proud of your children, obviously. But on a roping level, I think the professional cowboys are extremely fortunate to have people like Trevor Brazil and Patrick Smith. These are team ropers. Trevor Brazil's been a 26-time world champion, but Trevor Brazil is the nicest human being that you'll ever want to meet. I mean, you'd never know he was a world champion. He's very considerate, kind, thoughtful of you. Most definitely. Over the years, we've had kids stay out here. I mean, literally, our old place, we had 76 stalls, and they were always taken. So, I mean, we were talking how many horses and people stayed out there. And people would say, well, how you have so many people? All these, and I call them kids, because at my age, they're all kids to me. All these kids were grown up in Ellensburgs all over the United States. Most of them aren't grown up in New York City or Miami, Florida. They're in rural settings, very respectful. We've been to several of their weddings and stuff like that. I mean, they're friends of ours. We've made friends over the last 30 plus years of being around roping events and stuff. So, and we look forward to them as they're coming again this year. We used to do a roping where we had 100 professionals and we had 70 amateurs. So we put on a roping for 170 people on one day. That's quite an undertaking. My wife did 90% of the work. Now we do a roping where I call it the perfect 10. We get 10 professionals and their wives, because that's their perfect 10 is their wife, And so this will be our second perfect 10 we're doing this year. And it's pretty fun because they rope with their wives, which they don't ever get an opportunity to do, for prizes and money.